What's up everyone, welcome to today's video, welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. For those of you who are Hogwarts Legacy fans, I want to go ahead and share something with you guys because I feel it's very important right now that you are very well aware of what might be going on in the next few months regarding this game if, and that is if, some things that I'm noticing or seeing line up with what my suspicions are so far. Now, some of you may or may not know my background on watching this video. I'm somebody whom, by proxy, has been somewhat infected by the excitement of the Hogwarts Legacy community about this game that I went ahead and pre-ordered my own copy, waiting to experience and learn a lot more about the game as I get to play it. And so this is, in a sense, somebody who wants to see this game actually do well, succeed, and be a game that's enjoyable and fun. But there are a few things that I wanted to point out here because the Hogwarts Legacy community is actually very excited and looking forward to this game, and I wanted to give you guys a heads up. Protect your game. Protect this fandom and this excitement that you have regarding this game, because if some of the parameters that I'm seeing actually line up the way they are, this game is probably going to get some serious attack from a segment of the gaming community that is, in a sense, very, I don't know, but let me point it out so maybe you can judge for yourself how you might be able to envision this, because I know this might not affect your decision to play the game anyways. You're already a fan, you probably already pre-ordered, and so this is not something that would deter you, but I want you to make sure that you are actually enjoying your game and not worry about any other deterrents or any detractors that will point out that Hogwarts Legacy is probably in a specific place. Now, the game is a few months out. I've been waiting a few days to see if anybody would mention this, but I hadn't seen anything about it. And that is the gameplay showcase that was actually put out just a few days ago. Some of you may know my background. I'm somebody who enjoys game development. I put myself in a position to learn a little bit over the course of the last 2 years, and it's been a very fun, adventure. In fact, another thing that's also been much more fun is the fact that in learning game development, I've found myself a lot at odds with a lot of gamers. Every time when I present something from a developer perspective, most of the time I get hounded or I get lambasted or sometimes slandered because somebody doesn't necessarily agree with the prevailing evidence in front of them. Preconceived notions are what they are, and I understand. Sometimes it's hard to change people's minds. You could be showing somebody the sun and say it's morning, and they'll tell you there's no way, it's night. I understand. Now, at that game developer showcase for the gameplay for Hogwarts Legacy, many may have noticed, or some of you did not notice, that the game was running on a PlayStation 5 development kit, and the game was running at 30 FPS. Now, this is a big, huge conversation in the gaming community right now. Some of you know, and some of you were here when games like A Plague Tale Requiem, Gotham Knights, and even a game that is going to be coming out soon, Evil West, pretty much showcase that their own gameplay will be in 30 FPS on some of the consoles, or in the case of Evil West, they were able to get their game all the way to 60 FPS, but at 1080p. Even at the 60 FPS at 1080, some people were still not satisfied as to that performance, at this stage. So on looking at Hogwarts Legacy in the day that they actually did the gameplay showcase, I was looking very closely at the footage and I was like, this looks like it's running at 60 FPS. Now, I understand that this is in-game footage, it is a work in progress, but I'm looking at, say, a game like Gotham Knights when we first saw its gameplay. Even though the game was further out in development than Hogwarts Legacy is at this point in time when we saw its gameplay footage, the game came out just exactly the way it was at that time. Let me give you the timeline. We got to see some other gameplay in May of 2022. From that time, the game eventually released in October, which is much longer than your February release date, or our February release date. Let me put it that way, since I have a copy on the line waiting as well. And so when you think about it, there's a likelihood, I'm not saying there's a surety, that Hogwarts Legacy would probably be releasing on a PlayStation 5 at a performance mode that may not be 60 FPS at launch. Now, this might change, and I hope it does. I want the game to run at 60 FPS at launch on the consoles. But this is a what-if scenario. What if it doesn't run at 60 FPS at launch? This is probably, like I said, not going to deter a lot of the fans because a lot of the fans are invested. To them, they don't really care. They just want to play the Hogwarts Legacy game they've been looking forward to. But you are going to have elements from outside the community come out and start to trash on the game because of this one thing that, in my opinion, I feel is very arbitrary, because from a development perspective, it is something that I don't necessarily think is the most important thing. But in today's world, where most of the console manufacturers are telling everybody that their consoles are capable of playing games at these kinds of performance modes, whereas the game development pattern and the game development technology and the game development paradigms are still where they are for the most part for the past few years, it doesn't seem like things have lined up yet on all sides. In recognizing this, I usually come out and talk about some of the challenges and some of the different aspects of why game development and why we're not seeing what people perceive in their minds to be the performance that should be across all games. All games are not like t-shirts that you mail at a factory. It's very different. Every game, if you were to categorize it, say, into clothes, is a different piece of clothing. Some games are jackets, some games are hoodies, some games are jeans, some are pants. The way you're going to go ahead and actually fabricate all of these will be different. And this is the most simplistic analogy. It's a terrible one, but it's the best one that I can get you at this moment in time. But one other thing, too, that you have to notice is even though this is work in progress, this might also be something that gets to start a conversation that even gets your developers or our developers, I guess, into coming out ahead to talk about the performance and put it out there up front. Now, already, I can pretty much from just watching this gameplay review the other day, the gameplay showcase, tell you reasons why this was probably running at 30 FPS in this presentation. I'm going to do so in this video so I don't have to make another video beating a dead horse. And it's very simple. Hogwarts Legacy is going to be some sort of an open world game. I remember the developers taking you outside towards the end of the presentation and showing you the world and saying, hey, everything that you can see and everywhere that you see, you can actually go in this game. I thought that was very interesting. They showcased their world, and that being said, it means that the game is actually going to be a game that will be tasking on these machines. And so that being the case, there's a possibility that the game will probably be running at that fidelity. Now, it could also be that the game is probably not going to be stuck at 30 FPS. They could get it to the 60 FPS mark without any problems. But if this is the case where the world is open and you have to actually go anywhere you want to go, then streaming it on PS5 or Series X will probably have required for them to do it in a stable way at 30 FPS. That's just one way that I think in a technical sense, they could have gotten the job done. Another thing too is the game is a magic-based game. Magic-based game or games that are actually heavy on visual effects are very tasking on any machine. In fact, I have a 3090 that I had to return because every time I actually fired up Unreal Engine 4 when I was doing some of my projects, when I work with visual effects, and I actually fired them, I would have coil whine. Now, some of you know what that is. Specifically, I just know it's a sound that's very annoying, and you might do some things, maybe it'll work, but it usually occurs on these heavy graphics processing, devices whenever you have too much task going on. So all of these limitations, engineering-wise and physics-wise, are something that you actually have to go ahead and discuss in terms of saying, how are we going to get to the point where we're running these much more ambitious games and getting these fidelities? Because Hogwarts Legacy is bigger than any other Harry Potter game that has ever been made. This is a fact that must be acknowledged. It's something that I am looking at in my mind and saying, definitely, this is exactly the scale of games that we want. But the challenge in today's world is some people are still expecting that some games will run at, say, the fidelity that will probably be reminiscent of these new machines, but also have that same level of ambition and scale. I don't think it's possible. If this was a linear game where they actually channeled your entire path, you can only go here at certain times or in given arenas like how they do God of War, Uncharted, and a lot of the PlayStation games, I can definitely say yes. There is a reason to be able to see how those games, and I'm sure somebody would cite those games, run at higher fidelity. But usually, once you open up the world, it's all a different process at that time. Now, another thing too that is quite interesting is how other games would usually carry this stuff out, because there are other games that have open worlds where you can go anywhere that do run at 60 FPS. A game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla is one that actually can do very good performance on consoles. I guess Ubisoft has their alchemy, but Hogwarts Legacy is running on Unreal Engine 4, which is an engine that now, for those of us who've been following Unreal Engine and doing a lot of Unreal Engine stuff, are starting to see that the engine is actually very limited for open world games. I think this makes sense why Epic went super hard in making their Unreal Engine 5, and even studios like Warner Brothers Games Montreal, CD Projekt Red, and others are moving to Unreal Engine 5 because that engine actually provides a lot more options and gives you better strategies to be able to make a better open world game in that platform or with whatever platform you have in mind. So, this conversation was to go ahead and basically inform, try my best to educate, and let everybody know that if this becomes a thing, if this game runs at that performance on the new gen consoles, then there's possibly something that you actually know or are aware of as to why. If at any rate we get a 60 FPS version of the game when the game releases, or maybe even a 40 FPS version, that will probably mean that they probably already have a solution to be able to get the game at a higher fidelity. But on seeing that game being played at that fidelity on that day on a PlayStation 5 dev kit, as the developer mentioned, I was telling myself, I think we now have a high likelihood, at least a 70% chance, that the game is going to be coming out at this quality on the PlayStation 5 and possibly the Xbox Series X. Well, if it comes out at any fidelity on the PS5, it has to come out on that same fidelity at the Xbox Series X. There's some kind of a development agreement that I've heard of being spoke of, where you're not allowed to release one game in a better performance mode, over the other game. I think there are minimal requirements that must be met. Now, if you also might say there probably is a 60 FPS version somewhere, I want to let you know that there was something that was also really peculiar in the combat side of this game. Those of you who know this channel, you know I really like the combat sequence of the channel, different video games, and I mention and talk about them on this channel. And when they showed the combat in this game, I started to see the biggest challenges in regard to visual effects and so on and so forth, as they were actually using the combat dummy and eventually moving all the way, say, to having other students basically spar with you. I just noticed that there were some really, really tough visual elements that were, trying to kind of get themselves in place over the course of the video. Pardon my internet connection, by the way. It's not the game that's actually getting stuck here. It's just my internet connection is not, good enough to basically run this humongous video. But on looking very closely at the visual effects and the way all the different students were fighting, it was very apparent to me that this game is a very, very heavy game, because already you're seeing visual effects fly. You have RPG elements, a lot of code running in the background. You have an open area, you have colors, you have visuals, and all of the above. And when you actually consider that this is actually scaled to even bigger levels and an open world, the complexity cake starts to get higher as it stacks upon itself. But there are a lot of technical things to consider here, and I'm hoping that we get a higher, fidelity version. But if we do not, make sure that as a fan, you protect your game, you enjoy your game, because like I already said and established, for most fans, this is not going to be a deterrent if this is the case. And for those who don't even have the next-gen consoles, this isn't even a question, right? You're already going to be playing the game regardless of what the fidelity can bring out on your PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. I look forward to the game. I'm really happy that there is actually a new concept coming out, and I just watched this community get super excited, and it's actually something pretty cool. I'll be taking a closer look at a lot of the technical sides. I'll be talking about PC performance, and maybe we'll be looking a little bit into some of the technical specifications and see if it's actually likely that we may be able to get this game running at a really cool performance mode on consoles. Talk to me in the comment section if you have any questions. I'll be happy to, basically reply, and we can chat about this here in another video